When people ask me how much income you need to live comfortably in Miami, they're usually underestimating it or wildly overestimating it. And Miami isn't cheap, but it's also not impossible. And the real issue that I see most people moving here is never actually run the numbers properly. They see the ocean, they see the skyline, and they see the lifestyle, and they assume they'll figure out the financial part later. That's how people end up loving Miami, but feeling constant financial pressure. So today, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna break this down clearly with real numbers. Renting, buying condos, buying houses, and what comfortable actually means here. Because surviving in Miami and living comfortably in Miami are two very different things. So let's start with the first reality that most relocation buyers don't hear, and that is qualification and comfort are not the same thing. A bank might approve you for a property that technically fits their risk calculations, but that doesn't mean that you'll feel financially relaxed living here. Banks calculate risk. They don't calculate your quality of life. And if you're relocating, the last thing that you want is to arrive in a new city and already be stretched financially. So instead of asking what the bare minimum income is to live here, the better question is this: what income is going to give you a margin? And by margin, I mean flexibility. And that means that you can enjoy the city, travel occasionally, invest, and still sleep well at night. So let's walk through some realistic tiers, and we're going to start right off with renting. Now, if you're relocating to Miami and you're renting in desirable areas like Brickell, Edgewater, Coconut Grove, or even parts of Coral Gables, a modern one-bedroom apartment is typically somewhere between about $2,800 and $3,800 per month, depending on the building and the amenities, as well as, of course, the view. Now, that's just your rent. You have to add utilities, in some cases parking, renter's insurance, and maybe a gym membership in the building, just depending on where you're at. Realistically, you're going to be spending somewhere between $3,200 and $4,200 per month on your housing alone. Now let's model this out so you can get some real life figures here. If you earn $120,000 per year, after taxes, you're probably taking home somewhere around $7,000 to $7,500 per month, depending on your individual deductions. Now, if your housing is $3,500 of that, you've already committed nearly half of your take-home income to rent. Now, can you live on the remainder? Yes, but you now have to factor in groceries, transportation, insurance, dining out, travel, savings, unexpected expenses. Suddenly that margin starts to disappear really quickly. So while someone earning $120,000 can absolutely live in Miami, that doesn't mean necessarily that they'll feel financially comfortable. In my experience, renters start to truly feel comfortable in Miami somewhere in the $130,000 to $160,000 income range as a single professional. At that level, you can afford to rent a solid place, enjoy the city occasionally, and still maintain savings. Now, let's move up to buying a condo. And this is where things start to really change dramatically. In many desirable Miami neighborhoods, the median condo prices often sit somewhere between about $550,000 and $750,000, depending on the area and your building. Now let's use $650,000 as a realistic middle of the road. With a standard 20% down payment, that means that you'd be putting down about $130,000. Your loan could be somewhere around $520,000 given the down payment. With the current interest rates, your mortgage payment would land somewhere around $3,900 to $4,300 per month, depending on the exact terms. But now here's the part that relocation buyers often underestimate, and that is HOA fees. Miami condo buildings come with amenities, pools, gyms, security, valet, maintenance, reserves. I know of one building that even has a recording studio in it. Now, HOA fees in newer buildings can range from $700 to $1,500 per month, depending on the building. And of course, you have some outliers. So suddenly, your housing cost isn't $4,000 anymore. Now it's closer to $5,000 or $5,800 per month once the HOA is included. And that's before your property taxes, insurance, adjustments, utilities, and hopefully we're going to be getting some legislation that's going to help to alleviate some of those property taxes for homesteaded properties, but we'll have to wait and see how that ends up shaking out. Now let's run the income math again. If your housing cost is about $5,500 per month, lenders generally prefer that you remain around 28 to 30% of your gross income to sustain comfortably a payment without feeling financially squeezed. I like to see income closer to about $200,000 annually for a single buyer. Could someone qualify for less? Yes. But qualifying and feeling comfortable are two very different experiences. And now let's talk about single family homes. In neighborhoods like Coconut Grove, Coral Gables, and parts of South Miami, they offer beautiful homes. You've got tree-lined streets, quiet neighborhoods, you've got strong schools, and even more space. But pricing reflects that. And now your entry-level homes in these desirable pockets often begin somewhere around $900,000 and quickly move into the $1.2 to $1.8 million range. Now, using a conservative example of $1.1 million homes, with a 20% down, that would be $220 upfront on your down payment, and your mortgage loan would be left around $880,000. Now, depending on your interest rates, your mortgage payment alone could easily land somewhere between $6,000 to $6,800 per month. And now we need to add property taxes, homeowners insurance, which has increased significantly in Florida in the last few years. We need to add maintenance, landscaping, utilities, and some general costs of maintaining a house. Your monthly total housing costs can realistically and very easily approach $7,500 to $8,500 per month. And at that level, I typically would like to see a household income something closer to $275,000 to about $350,000 annually to really carry that comfortably. Now, this is not an exaggeration. This is simple, responsible, and financial math. Now let's talk about the 3 mistakes that relocation buyers make when thinking about income in Miami. The first mistake that I see is buying at the maximum amount that they're approved for. Now, just because a lender approves you for a certain price, it doesn't mean that that price fits your lifestyle. Banks don't account for your travel habits, your investment goals, hobbies, or the fact that you might want some financial flexibility. They're calculating risk exposure, not your happiness. The second mistake is ignoring HOA and insurance increases. Florida is dynamic, and insurance policies adjust and associations raise fees. Special assessments happen as buildings get older. The cost to maintain them increases with the age, of course. So if your numbers are tight on day one, those future increases will create stress. And the third mistake that I see is relocating without any reserves. Closing costs, furnishing a new home, moving expenses, all of that adds up very quickly, and I like to see buyers close on a property and still have 6 to 12 months of reserves untouched. Can you get away with 3? Absolutely. And it's not necessarily because you're going to need it, but because financial breathing room creates confidence. And that confidence is going to allow you to enjoy this city instead of worrying about it. Now, here's something important about Miami that isn't always talked about, and that is that Miami rewards earners. If you're entrepreneurial, if you're remote, if you're scaling your income, this city can accelerate that very quickly. But if you're stretching financially just to be here, then your pressure is going to compound. So when people ask me how much they need to feel comfortably and live well in Miami, the real answer is this. It's enough so that your housing doesn't control your decisions. Enough that you can say yes to opportunities, and enough that you can enjoy the city without any resentment. Because resentment usually comes from being overextended. And overextension almost always comes from underestimating the total cost of living here. Miami isn't cheap, but it's also not unreasonable. It's just a city that simply requires clarity. And clarity is something that most people skip before they decide to make the relocation. So if Miami is on your radar and you want to talk it through, I'm easy to find.